episode of Explained with me. Viewers, today we are talking about Epstein files and taking you inside one of the most secretive and controversial stories of our times. New images from Jeffrey Epstein's private island have just been released by House Democrats, and while they may not reveal the new facts, they surely reopen long-standing questions about how a network of abuse was built, protected, and concealed for decades. For years, Epstein's operations have been surrounded by silence, speculation, and political finger-pointing. But now, with the US Congress pushing for full transparency and US President Donald Trump signing a bill to release the long-buried files, the case has moved from the shadows into the center of America's political arena. Over the next few minutes, we break down what these new images show, why Democrats and Republicans are battling over the Epstein files, and what we now understand about the investigations that have spanned over nearly 20 years. Let's begin. Now, we first talk about the new images and videos released by House Democrats from Jeffrey Epstein's private Caribbean island, Little St. James, offering the public an unusual glimpse into a place that was long shrouded in secrecy. The footage includes walkthroughs on your screens of Epstein's home, showing bedrooms, an office or library, and a chalkboard wearing words like fin, intellectual, deception, and power. Other images reveal a room with a dentist chair and masks hanging on the wall, connecting to Epstein's last girlfriend, who was a dentist and shared an office with one of his shell companies. These materials were gathered in 2020 by law enforcement authorities in the US Virgin Islands, a year after Epstein's death in a Manhattan jail. The law authorities highlight Little St. James as one of two islands owned by the disgraced financier and convicted sex offender, which locals had allegedly nicknamed as the pedophile island. Now, these islands were central to a 2022 legal settlement exceeding $100 million, which followed allegations that Epstein trafficked, assaulted, and held dozens of young women and children captive at St. James Little Island. Now, as we mentioned earlier, that while the new images themselves do not reveal new information or facts, they reinforce Congress's ongoing efforts to maintain pressure on the US Justice Department ahead of a December 19 deadline to release related files. A bipartisan group of lawmakers requested an update on the case, emphasizing transparency and accountability. This unprecedented look into Epstein's private world sets the stage for broader questions about the documents and files connected to his operations, which also lead directly into the recent political and legal developments surrounding their release. Now, earlier in November, in a significant development, US President Donald Trump signed a legislation ordering the Justice Department to release documents from its long-running investigations into Jeffrey Epstein. The files, long sought by both political opponents and supporters, could shed new light on Epstein's activities, including his connections to high-profile figures before his 2008 conviction, which revolved around him soliciting a minor for prostitution. Now, Trump had initially opposed the release, warning that making internal investigative records public could set a harmful precedent. However, as bipartisan support for the bill became clear, he reversed his position and celebrated the signing, framing it as a move to expose certain Democrats' associations with Epstein. Attorney General Pam Bondi confirmed that the Justice Department will release the material within 30 days, excluding any documents that could compromise ongoing criminal investigations, identity victims, or include explicit images of abuse. This legislative action is very significant not just for the public but also politically, highlighting how Epstein's case continues to influence the national conversation and intersect with partisan dynamics. The bill's signing now transitions us to understanding the president's evolving stance and the role his administration played in this process. Now, interestingly, just days earlier, President Trump urged House Republicans to vote in favor of releasing Epstein-related files, signaling a reversal from his previous resistance. Now, his public statements emphasized transparency and framed the vote as a chance to counter what he claimed was a Democratic-driven smear campaign. Experts say that Trump's shift in fact followed House Speaker Mike Johnson's suggestion that a vote could clarify allegations regarding his connections to Epstein. Although Trump and Epstein were photographed together decades ago, the president maintained that they had fallen out before Epstein's 2008 conviction. Yet emails released from Epstein records hinted that he believed Trump knew about the young girls involved, though accurate details regarding the same remain unclear. The drastic push to release documents has caused tension within Congress, highlighting divisions even among Trump's supporters. Some allies criticized the handling of the files, and the president responded by withdrawing support from certain lawmakers. Now, this makes us question what these Epstein files actually contain and consist of, and why their release matters so much. The term Epstein files refers to multiple sets of documents recovered in the span of the last 2 decades rather than a single archive. So the trail began in 2005 when a 14-year-old girl in Palm Beach reported Epstein for sexual abuse. A police investigation revealed a wider pattern of underage recruitment. Epstein tactfully avoided federal charges in 2008 by negotiating a controversial non-prosecution agreement which shielded unnamed co-conspirators and allowed him to serve just 13 months in a work release program. Now, in the following years, many aspects of Epstein's activities still had remained hidden. But in 2015, civil cases such as Virginia Gifford's defamation lawsuit against Ghislaine Maxwell partially unsealed court files, revealing flight logs, depositions, high-profile contacts and others. Again, in 2019, federal prosecutors reopened the case, charging Epstein with sex trafficking of minors. His subsequent death in custody, which was ruled a suicide, fueled public skepticism and intensified calls for transparency. Investigation reports say that the files now encompass flight logs, visitor lists, donation records, unsealed testimony, and materials recovered from Epstein's properties. They also include extensive interviews, evidence from raids, and tens of thousands of documents and digital files gathered over 2 decades. While some files are withheld to protect victims, the overall release promises deep insight into the scope of Epstein's network and operations. Now, most recently, the House Oversight Committee released thousands of emails from the Epstein estate. Earlier releases included documents like a notoriously designed birthday book containing a note which before US President Trump's name. Now, though he denied authorship, the first phase of declassified materials released in February this year by the Department of Justice and FBI included flight logs and redacted contact books. Now, with Trump's approval and recent legislation, we now see the possibility of new documents emerging which could potentially illuminate previously hidden connections and his activities as well. Additionally, it is also rather interesting to note here that the vote in the House of Representatives to release the files was following a specific discharge petition gathering the necessary signatures to trigger floor action. The bill passed 427 to 1 with only Republican Clay Higgins opposing it. The bill then moved quickly through the Senate via unanimous consent and was signed into law by President Trump. Meanwhile, some Republicans have expressed concern that investigations into Epstein's connections could delay or block parts of the release, with others fearing a flurry of investigations could be used strategically to withhold information. With the bill enacted, the Justice Department faces pressure to provide transparency while balancing the protection of victims and ongoing investigation. Now, as we end today's episode of Explained, one thing is clear. The Epstein case remains one of the most disturbing and politically charged stories in modern American history. New images, new documents, and new legislation are slowly pulling back the curtain on a world that operated for far too long without transparency, oversight, or even accountability. But even with a mandated release of the Epstein files now underway, the full truth will not arrive instantly. What we do know, however, is that this moment marks a turning point. For the first time, both parties in Washington have agreed, at least publicly, that the American people deserve clarity. Now, whether these files expose new connections, confirm long-suspected details, or simply close a painful chapter, they will play a defining role in how the country remembers the Epstein saga. And as more information surfaces, we will continue to break it down, explain it clearly, and bring you every new development. But for now, that's all. For more updates, keep watching NewsX World.